Hi, Professor Sumi. How are you?
Hello, perfectly fine. Hi, Saundarya. Can I request everyone to please switch on the video?
Hello, Professor Sumi. Shivangi joining.
Hello, hello, Shivangi. Hello, Faye. Hello, Bhavana. Hello, Dilip.
Hello.
So we will be starting our panel discussion shortly. Okay. So would you like to check on anything?
No, I'm good. I'm good. I think the detail that you gave is pretty self-explanatory, helpful, so that should be good. Hi, Faye. Nice to,
Hi,
I
Dr.
mean,
Rajesh. Nice to meet you in person.
good to see you. I know. Lovely to see you. And great work, people from P&G to put this together along with NITIE. I think this is a fantastic partnership and so happy to be part of this.
So good afternoon, panel members. I understand that it is an opportunity for us to listen to a very interesting topic where the meaning of stereotype differs with person to person. And we have right set of panel members who will do justice to the topic as all of them have broken stereotype. Welcome to the discussion on breaking stereotypes. There is a famous saying, history is made by those who break rules. Let us reframe it to history is made by those who break stereotypes. We have an illustrious panel members and moderator to discuss on the topic. The theme of today's discussion will revolve around social and emotional barriers in breaking stereotype, achieving balanced participation of women and men, gender mainstreaming, and understanding and overcoming social stigma. Our first panel member is Dr. Saundarya Rajesh. Hello, ma'am.
Hi. Hello, Professor Sumi. Wonderful to be part of this session, and it's a great initiative by NITIE and P&G. More power to you.
Dr. Rajesh is one of India's most respected thought leaders on diversity and inclusion. An award-winning social entrepreneur, she is best known as the pioneer of second career opportunities for women in corporate India. She has been recognized as 100 Women Achiever by India's Ministry of Women and Child Development, as also listed in the United Nations Women Transforming India. Welcome to the panel, Dr. Saundarya.
Thank you.
Our second panel member is Ms. Shivangi Jain. She is serving as a Senior Director Purchases for P&G Feminine Hygiene Care business across APAC, Middle East, and Africa. Her 14 plus years track record of making interventions across several industries and delivering strong business results across sourcing of raw and packed materials, contract manufacturing, shared procurement services, innovation services, manufacturing indirect expenses, and capital equipment related purchases is based on her leadership philosophy. Passion does wonders. Attitude makes all the difference. Welcome to the panel, Shivangi.
Thank you, Professor Sumi. Very glad to be part of this esteemed panel. I think I am from NITIE and now in P&G, so I am so proud to see these two powerhouses coming together for this cause. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next panelist is Ms. Bhavana Issar. Bhavana is the founder and CEO of social venture Caregiver Saathi, which supports family caregivers for their well-being and psychosocial needs through coaching, counseling, support groups, and training. She is a passionate person with diverse interests. After her corporate stint in HR, she is an organization consultant in leadership development and organization building. She is a facilitator in process work with Sumedha's Academy for Human Context and Gestalt OD practitioner. Her story was indeed included in the book by best-selling author Rashmi Bansal, Touch the Sky, Stories of Women Across India Who Are Changing Their Destiny. Motorcycling has helped her push the boundaries of the body and mind. She supports women motorcyclists to realize their dreams. Welcome to the panel, Bhavana.
Delighted to be here. Thank you for having me. Very excited about this conversation. Looking forward.
Thank you. Our fourth panelist of the panel is Mr. Dilip Patubala. Dilip Patubala is the co-founder and CEO of Sukhibhava Foundation, a not-for-profit based out of Bangalore, working towards making menstruation a non-issue. Sukhibhava has so far worked with nearly 2 lakhs plus women and girls across 8 states in India through their programs. The Period Fellowship and the Period Entrepreneurship. Dilip is also an Acumen Fellow. Welcome to the panel, Dilip.
Thank you so much, Sumi. Really looking forward to engaging with you all.
Thank you. The moderator of the panel is Ms. Faye DSouza. Faye DSouza is the famous Indian journalist and a television news anchor who has been the executive editor of Mirror Now and now CNBC 18, TV 18. Her famous show, The Urban Debate, brought forth very important and sensitive subjects of corruption, communal violence, and independent press. She has been awarded the Red Ink Award for Journalist of the Year in 2018. I know all of us are eager to hear the panel. I will hand over to Faye for moderation. Thank you, Faye. Can you please start the event?
All right. Thank you, Sumi. And I want to thank the team at NITIE and P&G for organizing such an important conversation. Just a quick correction, I'm no longer with television. I left television over a year and a half. I'm now an entrepreneur and I run an organization on internet and I'm an independent journalist. So quick correction that I'm no longer with the Times Group. It's a wonderful that has been put together today to talk about very important subjects. So it's a pleasure for me to be part of this all, especially at a time when data tells us that after the last 1 year of lockdowns, that participation of women in the workforce has actually come down even further. That it is very likely that of all the people who did lose their jobs over the last 1 year, that women have lost more jobs as a percentage of the total working population than men have. And research also tells us that the reasons for this are pressures at home, family expectations, and the need to juggle things. I find it interesting that in India, apart from the fact that women do take sabbaticals and take breaks when children are born and when there are elderly parents to care for, we're also the only country in the world where women take a break when their children are in the 10th standard and there is a board exam to be given, because somehow that is also a woman's responsibility in the household. And so there are so many things to come back from, but it also to me sounds like there are so many things that are of higher priority than a woman's career within the household. When those questions are being asked, saying, okay, someone needs to take the hit, who's that going to be? It's invariably the woman. So there are two sides of this conversation. One is obviously, how do we keep women from, sacrificing their careers for all of these other responsibilities that they will continue to have. Because quite frankly, I don't think we have the time to wait for society to sort of change its mind about things like this. The other thing is, how do we bring women back after the sabbatical in a way that is fulfilling to them? Because I've personally noticed a lot of women who come back and then just don't feel like this is worth their time because they're sidelined, their skills are not being used, they're not properly being motivated, and then they turn around and say, you know what, I would rather spend my time at home with my child than have to come here and sort of be sidelined and feel bad about myself. So not only to bring women back, but also to keep them motivated and to do it in a way that treats their skills and their expertise with respect. So that's fundamentally what I'm looking at. But we'll also talk largely about breaking the stereotypes in various workspaces and what that has been like. My first question, if I may start with Dr. Saundarya, Rajesh, and you've done a lot of work, on the concept of second career opportunities. I was looking at data, Dr. Rajesh, that tells us that in the last 5 years or so, Indian girls, actually more Indian girls have registered for higher education, which means more women in India are going to school and finishing college. But the numbers in the workspace participation has actually come down, where these two things should actually go hand in hand. Are we still at a point, in your opinion, where we are having to break stereotypes on that front? Is there a reason why we have fewer and fewer women in the workspace? And where do you think that, that the tackling of that problem should start?
Uh, Hi, Faye, and great to connect with you once again. And thanks to P&G and NITIE for this wonderful opportunity. Yes, it's a curious case in India of educational attainment and women's workforce participation having a negative correlation. This is indeed a weird problem. So as women get educated more and more, their workforce participation rate drops. Can you imagine that? And today, the women's workforce participation rate post corona has come down by almost 2 percentage points in India. Given the large number of migrant women who actually, kind of dropped off, the large number of women in various industries such as IT, hospitality, and several other service industries who were literally at the front line of the disposable, economic challenges, where they were the ones that had to take the fall when it came to, people who had to be let go. With all of that put together, we are at about 25.5% women's workforce participation in this country, which means approximately probably 1 out of every 4 women is actually working. And I must share with you that of these, the 25% women, almost 80% are agricultural workers. So you can then imagine the actual number of urban women or white collar workers or blue collar workers in India's urban cities, towns that are actually pursuing careers. Now, you asked me what are the biases or the stereotypes that actually, have created this sort of a situation? Why is this happening? Very simply put, I think it's a combination of stereotypes that are of which women are recipients, which means they are the bias recipients, and also stereotypes of which women are the carriers. So they are the bias carriers. So both of these things are there. And in our work, in our research of what has happened with regard to women and why they drop off and that entire piece, we find that there is one set of women professionals who are eager to work, who are eager to get into the workplace, but who are pulled back by the several biases, and other things which actually impact the woman professional. But even more importantly, there are several stereotypes that the woman holds in her mind, stating that, these are things that are the challenges that, sort of prohibit me from working. And both of these come together to result in the kind of poor numbers that we see in the workplace, Faye. And what can organizations do about it? Most certainly, organizations are the precursors of change. They are the harbingers of change. Because I honestly believe that every progress that you see starts off because an organization wants to serve a set of customers, wants to see certain progress. So I definitely believe that when companies and the leaders of those organizations come together and believe that we need to create a welcoming workplace for women, or for that matter any member of an underrepresented talent pool, then I think change will definitely manifest. So I think the stereotypes that we speak about, both sides, from the organization side, from the woman's own side, probably from the family side, all of these, they have to be accepted, they have to be worked on, they have to be broken. And no better platform for that than what organizations set up for themselves.
Very well said. I want to bring in Issar on the same point, because this is something she's done a lot of work on. How important is it, Ms. Issar, to create an environment where there is room for stereotypes to be broken? Because now, we have a panelist from P&G as well. Shivangi Jain has worked in many spaces which are not considered traditional to women. So spaces that, for example, STEM, engineering, manufacturing, real estate, construction, infrastructure, these spaces are not considered traditional to women. How do organizations create spaces where women can, in fact, break barriers, where men can break barriers in, in their allyship and in the kind of work that they want to do as well? Is that something that HR can engineer? Does that have to come from the top? What do we need to do?
All right. Thank you very much. I am delighted to be here. Feel free to call me Bhavana. Faye, I am a big fan of yours. That beside, I am delighted to be here for a variety of reasons. The idea of stereotypes keeps evolving, and it is fairly contextual. We will talk about that, but let me first talk about what can organizations and HR departments do. I will take an example, a leaf out of my own career. And in one of the organizations, and I'm not too sure whether I can name the organization right now, we had a challenge of having women in the sales force because it's a traditional organization where, you needed engineers in the workforce to be able to sell the product, or so the organization thought. There had been many attempts at bringing in women, saying that, okay, let's bring in women. So the first stereotype was, let's bring in women, we can bring them in HR and finance. So we brought them in HR and finance. But then there was this, that why should they be just in HR and finance? Look at Shivangi here. They could be in supply chain and sales and marketing as well. But, there's a whole traditional mindset that has to be moved. Here's if there could be a formula. We decided, and it took us a lot of effort, you can imagine, to first say, let's groom them from within the organization. What does that mean? We will hire them at the junior most positions, but we will hire a critical mass. So we decided to hire 100 sales trainees, entirely women, 100. Now, large organizations can have headcount constraints, but I think what worked was to be able to first ready the organization that we are going to be doing something like this, then hire a critical mass, a large enough number, so that they can sustain over a period of time. There will be many dropouts, but you can watch them over a period of time. And interestingly, there were many, many conversations to be had, not about the moral high ground of women should be brought in, this is the right thing to do, etc., but small group conversations with all the people who were stakeholders. For example, the other sales managers who felt safe to be able to voice their fears and anxieties. For example, there were a large number of middle-aged sales managers who said, Now the city plum jobs will all go to women because women will, they cannot go to up country and they will need to be posted with where their husbands are. And so all the city jobs will go to them. Now, maybe we will lose out on promotions. So, to summarize, a large number of people would feel fearful and anxious when you take an action like this. But can the organization, the HR team, or the leadership team create safe places for people to voice their fears and anxieties and be able to address what the new change might bring? To be able to weigh how the new change is better than the way we have been in the past, and this outweighs. We cannot do this by having the moral high ground of saying, this is the new way, diversity is the latest thing, women have to be brought in, we will take affirmative action, and so on. The conversation around debate and dialogue has to be ongoing. And think we have to have an environment in which such an experiment can fail as well. So that's the third piece that I would like to say, that so what if, we try this, it fails. That doesn't mean that when the environment changes, you could repeat that experiment and bring in a new way of learning from the previous experiment. So those would be some of the cornerstones of bringing about change in organizations that I would bring in from my experience.
I think what you said about failure is so important because every woman who enters a new space, who is the first to enter a new space, feels the burden of her entire community on her shoulder, because if there is any sort of failure, it will write off women for a while after that. It's being said about Vice President Kamala Harris, for example, that she's going to have to be a high functioning sort of saint for the next 4 years, because any mistake she makes will just be extrapolated to her entire, to her entire community. And that actually brings me to, our other panelist who has broken such stereotypes, Shivangi Jain. Like I said, has worked in spaces that are not traditional for women. How important is it? And I just want to pick up from what Bhavana was saying. How important is it, Shivangi Jain, that there be room for failure? I mean, personally, I consider a glass ceiling having broken at a point where an individual is judged for their for the quality of the performance, good or bad, being gender agnostic and not attributed to a gender, saying, oh, this is what happens when you bring in women into this job. This is what happens. See, they get they get pregnant and then they take leave, things like that. And I've actually when I was a very young reporter in Bangalore, working for CNBC TV18, I was actually talking to what was then the head of HR of that, of a premium IT company, who then went on to become board member and a very important individual in the public space, who at that point was addressing his head of HR saying, I told you not to hire so many women on your team. Now see, they've all gone on leave because they all had babies at the same time. Now what are you going to do? This sort of bias, where is the room there for humans to be humans? Shivangi?
Thank you, Faye. I completely understand and resonate with what just got said. I think the simple answer to this is get more women, right? Get more women in the workforce. Because if you put the pressure on only one single woman to be successful and extrapolate that to the entire organization, that itself, you are setting up yourself for failure, right? So I think the power lies in having equal representation at all levels, right from the grassroots level at shop floor, where you have technicians workforce which is more balanced between men and women, and you have mid management where women leaders are equipped with diverse workforce as well. At the same time, have relatable role models at senior leadership positions. If you have more number of women will get successful. That you are just increasing the probability of women's success in the organization and creating those examples. The other thing on breaking those biases is also the culture of the company, and it plays a very, very important role. And over there, I would say at an organization level, there are three things which are very important. One, having those policies and framework where women feel safe in raising their opinions, in raising their voices, giving them a conducive environment, supporting them in critical life stage changes, at the same time giving them a culture of inclusion. And that happens, one, with inclusion workshops that's just like, as Bhavana alluded to, you need to have that open dialogues between men and women of the organization, where and we have seen this in P&G, as you do this open dialogue, 70% of the problem gets solved in those dialogues itself without leadership giving any kind of trainings, because a lot of perspective come in which are actually gender agnostic. Whether a woman can be successful in a highly technical role or not, whether a woman can be successful in leading a team of technicians on the shop floor or not, a lot of women will feel that it is nothing to do with me being woman. A lot of men will feel that I can't do it because I have a different personality style, right? So those inclusion workshops help breaking those barriers. And the second thing in driving culture is also bring around men to advocate for real change. I think given that this is a male dominating industry, we need men play a very critical role in advancing women and giving them an environment where stereotypes can be broken. And as we engage with men and their hearts and mind to become equal partners in this conversation, this really, really helps exponentially in breaking those stereotypes and providing a more equal workforce and releasing the women from the burden of one woman from the burden of performing and extrapolating the.
That's actually really beautifully said, and I'm glad you brought in the idea of allies, because that now gives me a very nice segue into our next panelist, Dilip, who's been brave enough to be the only man on this panel. Thank you. And breaking stereotypes, Dilip, and the fact that you've taken up, issues that are normally considered the domain of women. That only, and I remember when we took up tax on sanitary napkins on primetime television, it was actually turned around. People said, this is what will happen if you make a woman an editor. She will talk about sanitary napkins and periods at dinner time. And I was like, exactly, this is exactly what we will do. So I was really, pleasantly surprised to discover that someone like yourself have decided to take this up. Would you tell us why you decided to take this up, and what impact you're currently creating and you hope to create in the future?
Certainly, Faye. Thank you so much for asking that question. Why I decided to take this up? Most of my career has been in the development space. I worked with multiple NGOs, and my last job I was working in urban slums, and we came across a situation where the menstrual health status of women in certain community was very low, and at that point of time, I did not really understand why I was responding to that issue far more impulsively than the 100 other issues that were existing in that community, right? So it took me like 3 years into running Sukhibhava that I arrived at like a realization that there's a shared experience. Probably it's not exactly the same, but what is really making me resonate to this subject is the sense of oppression that people carry, the sense of shame that is associated with body and bodily processes and identities that we all experience in different forms, in different ways. And it kind of goes back to my own childhood on how much space was I given to like express myself, be myself, etc. That is what really like gives me this passion to work on subjects that are stigmatized but had to be normal in an ideal world. So when we see women who are giggling the first time we meet, coming up to us and asking us, saying that I missed my period last month and I want to know why, I think that is a true moment of bliss and impact for us at Sukhibhava. In terms of the impact we're doing at Sukhibhava itself, we're a 6-year-old organization and we have worked in around 8 states across India, and we have nearly worked with around 200 plus women, 200,000 plus women across the 8 states. But what is interesting is how our work has evolved with COVID coming into picture, because we often talk about menstruation, menstrual health, we talk about awareness and workshops. But what I specifically want to emphasize here is with COVID, I think there is a lot of COVID response work that has happened over the last 1 year. But I often tend to see missing is the gender lens in the COVID response work, and how that lack of gender lens has impacted the gender work most of the organizations like Sukhibhava and many others have been doing for the last 10 years, and how the increase in sexual reproductive health concerns and menstrual health concerns have dynamically increased in like just in the span of 12 months, and how we're going back in time. So yeah, I'm really glad that this conversation is happening right now, and I hope this conversation paves ways to bring back the work that has been gone back in time in the last 12 months.
Thank you, Dilip. Just opening this up now to the whole panel to respond to what everybody else has said. If I just take a quick question to Bhavana, Issar, we're seeing a different sort of generation of younger women also approach the workspace. For example, questions on, and I find this, I always find this very fascinating, questions on period leave to give women an entitlement of a day or 2 days a month that they can take a period leave. A lot of women who have who joined the workspace about 20 odd years ago say, hey, you know what, we fought really hard not to be different, and now you are asking for an acknowledgement of that difference. I want to understand where you believe the organization plays a role in this. Um, what is your point of view in terms of when we break? So if I broaden that question, we say when we're breaking stereotypes, is there an attempt to erase the differences between men and women, because we're saying, we can fight just as hard, we can work just as hard, we will show no weakness whatsoever, irrespective of the sick child at home or the parent who needs my attention or the fact that I'm on my period, I will behave exactly like my male colleagues. Is that a route to adopt, or are we now looking, is it important to acknowledge the differences as well?
What a fantastic question, and I will probably need lots of hours to get around the response, but let me give this a shot. Yes, of course. I think it is important, it is the challenge. If we look at women at one point as fought for gender differences not to be there. It's the foundation of the feminist movement. The point is not that the differences are there or not there. The point is whether or not men and women have choice. So I'd like to focus on the idea of choice and the idea of being able to exercise choice and difference. So that's one point that I'd like to bring in terms of differences. So of course we carry our gender. We carry our gender not just physically, but in terms of how we relate to it psychologically. So there is, unfortunately, over a period of time, workplaces have become fairly masculine or have always been masculine. And the way to be successful at a workplace is to be able to demonstrate very masculine traits. And in order for women to be successful, and ambitious women who have wanted to be successful have had to build their masculine muscles far more than their feminine muscles. And I have a very distinct memory of watching a very senior male colleague talk about an emotional, fuzzy topic, but being considered this fantastic leader. And I was very wary, thinking that, my God, if I spoke about an emotional, fuzzy topic, one, I'm a woman, two, I'm from HR, that's the end of me, right? So if I have to be this cut and dry, ambitious person, I should be very unemotional, etc. I think the key is in the balance, and the key is in the choice that different people can make. So the key is not to whether or not period leave is warranted or not. I think there are some women who need it, and then there are some who don't need it. And organizations are usually places that need to have policy guidelines so that they can have a structured, predictable environment. So it's very hard to reduce everything down to a policy or a process. So long as there can be a dialogue, so long as there can be choice, and so long as there can be freedom of expression, I believe that we could explore new ideas as well. So there should be an opportunity for a young woman to bring up this conversation. For example, there was endometriosis is a very difficult condition. Not many people knew about it, but only women who suffer from it know the intensity of it. So there should be a space to bring up that conversation, and there could be a possibility of my exercising my choice for a time off because I have a different body. That is important, not the presence of a rule or a policy or one way of doing things. I think that's where the whole feminist thought is moving to also, which is that we should have the freedom for choice and expression.
It's actually beautifully put. We have a bunch of questions coming in, and I want to be able to take as many questions as we can. So I'll also start working the questions from the audience into our conversation. Asta Shukla asks a beautiful question. She says, there's a rising trend of stereotyping the success of women in corporate and academia on the basis of gender. Do you see do you see it affect the morale and performance of women in the workforce? And if I may, I'll take this question to Dr. Saundarya. There is, and I think a good way of a yardstick was the reaction of women across India to the victory of Kamala Harris. And many men on Twitter promptly pointed out to us that, hey, listen, she's not your vice president. What are you guys celebrating? But I think that there is a sisterhood across the world where if one woman breaks a barrier, we just feel like all of us have in some way found a victory. But does the stereotype also work in the opposite direction to hurt uh, morale and to hurt performance of women as well?
I'm going to have to request you to repeat the question again, Faye. We, at least in my case, I lost you in the middle a couple of times, and you know, I'm not sure if it's a bandwidth problem at my end or yeah.
I'm not sure as well. So I'll ask the question again. Asta Shukla says there's been a rising trend in stereotyping the success of women in corporate and academia on the basis of gender. Do you see it have effects on morale and performance of women in the workforce?
Okay, great question. And I think what I read into it is that are you succeeding just because you're a woman? Are you succeeding because you are a diversity candidate and somebody, you know, had a tick box on which they needed to fill something and you were conveniently available, so you filled that box, and therefore your success is not really your success, it is the success of the diversity agenda. If that is your question, yes, I think such instances do happen, but they only happen in organizations where you know, an affirmative action plan or where a diversity aspect, which is the representation, the numbers, that aspect doesn't go hand in hand with the culture building aspect, which is the inclusion aspect. You know, when Shivangi spoke, she mentioned about the fact that, you know, you need to have these training programs, you need to have these sensitization sessions where you know, people just come together and they really understand what it is to be a member of you know, a marginalized talent pool, of an underrepresented talent pool. So then in such case, when culture is built, when inclusion is built very intentionally, and what is culture but a set of norms, a set of behavior patterns where you say that this is acceptable behavior, this is the kind of behavior which we encourage in our workplace. Then when that culture is sort of encouraged, then these you know, sort of identifying a successful woman as being a diversity candidate, or just because she's a woman she got that job and so on, that disappears, because everybody understands that you have to have equity measures before you reach equality. I mean, there's this very, very famous visual. I'm sure all of you in the audience would have seen it one time or the other, but I don't mind, even at the risk of repeating it once again, to share it here with you. There is a wall, and there is a game happening on the other side of the wall. And on this side of the wall are three children. One is 5 foot tall, the other is 4 foot tall, and the third one is just 3 feet tall. And these three children want to look at the game that's happening, but the wall is 5 feet. So only the 5 foot tall guy, if he kind of, sort of stretches and looks, he might be able to get a little bit of an inkling of what's happening on the other side. But the 4 foot tall guy and the 3 feet tall kid, they can't do anything. Equality suggests that you give all of them a 2 foot stool or a 1 foot stool. Let's say it's a 1 foot stool. So the guy who's 5 feet tall, the kid, she is able to probably see it because, the 1 foot stool works for her. But in the other two cases, it doesn't. And in the third case, it's completely, absolutely useless. What equity says is give them the kind of stools that will actually help and support their journeys. And this is what translates into programs and policies in the workplace. So if you look at the Working Mother and Avtar 100 best companies for women in India, which is an initiative that we run and which we have now been successfully running for over 5 years, and this is our 6th year in running. And of course, P&G happens to be one of the 100 best companies for women in India. You will find that they look at equity, which is, programs, policies, initiatives, as that opportunity which creates that level playing field. But just the presence of those policies, programs won't work unless you have inclusion, unless you have culture building, unless you have behavioral norms, which are also brought in, that tell the people that, hey, this woman, yes, you could call her, a diversity agenda or whatever it is that you wish to do, but she deserves the equity. She deserves that empowerment simply because we want her to win. We want her to succeed. And that feeling can only come when you have inclusion go hand in hand with diversity and equity.
So I
I
just
hope
want to
I've
let the rest
answered
of
your
the
question.
Yes, yes, you have. I just want to let the rest of the panelists know that if you want to come in on anything, please let me, gesture to me and let me know. But we have so many questions coming in right now. Mahima asks a really interesting question, and I'm smiling because I identify with what she's saying. She says, there are a lot of things that are statements that are made that women have to hear in the workspace on a regular basis. Like women are too emotional, women leaders are bossy, we don't hire women for this role, your kids get in the way of your work. She said, what according to you is the most appropriate answer to such a stereotyping statement? What can we do on our behalf to remove such cliches from society? Shivangi, do you want to answer that question? What do you do? And I'm sure I don't think there's a single woman who has worked who's not heard these things. So, what have been your responses, and what is your advice to other women who hear, these sort of statements?
Yeah. So I think the first thing I would say is talk about it, right? Because if those statements are made in corridors and meeting rooms, etc., take some time, if not then and there itself, but later. But later doesn't mean, ages later. Later does means maybe, in the next few hours or 1 or 2 days. Go and have that conversation with the person. The reason these statements come in also, we need to also give benefit of doubt to our own colleagues. Many a times these are not intentional. Many a times these are just casual, unnecessary comments that come in. And sometimes, they become humorous as well. So we need to sensitize them with the impact that those statements create on us. And that can happen only when we have a conversation. Until we don't do that conversation, those biases will continue to exist. And I think that goes also for us as leaders. We need to encourage our teams, because all of us, honestly speaking, come from cultural background where we are groomed with certain biases or the other, right? We have been in a culture and the upbringing brings those biases into us. We also need to encourage our team to give us honest feedback when we have those biases coming into play. And as that feedback comes in, we need to pause and reflect and take corrective actions so that we can create a positive momentum of breaking those biases. So to me, it is very, very necessary to go and have an open, candid conversation on those remarks. Do not leave them unattended. I think that solves majorly the problem.
That's very well said. I have okay, there are more questions coming in. This question, hopefully, Dilip, you'd like to take. This one comes in from Sanchit. He says in remote areas of India, women still lag behind in taking and even if they sometimes suppressed by society can be done in such
I'm
situations.
losing you out.
What is the solution?
Faye, I'm sorry I lost you for the last 15 seconds.
Okay, so I apologize. It may be my internet. In remote areas of India, women still lag behind in taking the lead role, even if they're capable enough. And even if they get the chance, sometimes they're suppressed by society. What can be done in these situations?
We're talking about workforce or menstrual health?
I think we're talking about, but he says capable enough, we might be talking about workforce. But allow me to broaden the question a little bit. We know that menstrual health plays a massive role, especially in semi-urban tier 2, tier 3 India. Um, from puberty onward, a girl's ability to go to attend school, or ability to go to college, especially if the college involves a little bit of travel, or ability to pick up a job, that she really wants. Menstrual health plays a large role in all of these things. Where are the solutions according to you?
Yeah. So, from the last 6 years of we working, I think what we have understood as a solution has really evolved. Like we started off as a product distributor, but then we eventually have learned to understand that product access is definitely a problem. It's one part of a big problem. But along with the product access, there is a huge layer of like awareness, behavior change, and the stigma that is associated with the subject. Unless that is addressed, we will not be able to create demand for the product or not build in a sense of agency and confidence for menstruators in general to step up and participate in life. So when we often talk about menstrual health, I think like over the last 10 years, the dialogue has got bigger and bigger, but the conversation often stops at like a hygiene level, saying that, okay, like how many women are using sanitary napkins, etc. But unless we broaden that conversation to say that, okay, like what is the intersectionality of menstruation with sexual reproductive health and gender roles, I don't think we'll be able to like solve for it more comprehensively. So when we talk about menstruation, how can we get to a point where we're able to like make people comfortable talking about menstruation? Because it is also an entry point into talking about like how comfortable a menstruator is, how comfortably you're able to participate in school, work life, etc. So one of the data metric from our impact assessment processes is we have seen an incredible shift in participation of schoolgirls in school itself. Like before our intervention, there were about the participation of girls during menstruation in school was 13%, but after our intervention, it was 48%. So, like, and we are not a product distributor; we are awareness and behavioral change organization. So, what we realized was, like, girls being able to talk to relevant stakeholders like parents and family and seek support with their cramps or pain or discomfort has a huge influence on they being able to like participate in schools and they being able to buy products if they want to, because majority of the girls know that there are sanitary napkins existing and they can use them, but most often what stops them is they not being able to have this dialogue with their family members and ask them for a budget to say that I want to go buy sanitary napkins. So how can we move the conversation from just talking about hygiene to actually broadening the dialogue and saying that let's talk about periods and see what impact that brings us?
That's really well said. A question from Rohit, and I love this question. Rohit says, "Do you believe the choice? Sorry. Do you believe the choice that parents make in their children's toys, movies, lifestyle influences will all have an impact on the child's belief about the appropriate role for men and women in society?" I saw Shivangi raise her hand. Do you want to take this question, Shivangi? Go ahead.
I'm very passionate about this subject, right? And I think to me, it is children below the age of 6 absorb 40 million signals per minute, right? While adult only absorb 40 signals per minute. So that is a very tender age where we can really form the right subconscious within themselves. And that begins with doing, little things differently at home. How can we have a more equal household between me and my partner, and making sure that there are no roles which only I can do or what he can do, how we can share the household chores, how we can share the care of our kids, At the same time, we let them lead with their interest versus norms, right? The choice of clothing they wear, the colors they wear, the kind of toys they actually play with. I think we need to let them lead with interest. And on top of them, that give them really, really holistic education, right? Education which helps them to become flexible, not biased on one or the other, but an education which is a blend of modern sciences and Indian scriptures, where they can understand what is the wealth that has been given in our Indian scriptures, whether they talk about Arnarishwara or they talk about 5 elements of earth, 5 elements of nature with which every human being is constructed, and every human being is unique yet equal. So, that kind of education, when we give to our kids, they will be prepared for a more equal world. I think this is very, very important. I think kids they
Yes.
should lead with interest versus norms.
In fact, there's a question that's sort of related from Gaurav. Gaurav says, a girl's self-esteem, ambition, and expectations are the first victims of gender stereotypes. Therefore, eradicating cliches and their associate behavior should be the priority of any society uh, and in school. But Indian education system is nowhere near that. What can we do to improve the Indian education system? Bhavana, do you want to take that question? Is there work that needs to be done in our education system to break those stereotypes as well?
Absolutely. Lots of work to be done. So let me tell you a story, a couple of stories actually. I have a daughter who is in the 10th and I haven't taken a break from work. So just stating that up front. I don't think I can do anything about her academics, even if I took a break. So I might as well continue. That said, when she was really young, and I was very determined not to give her a biased upbringing, and I wanted her to have gender agnostic environment, etc. She was a determined girly girl. She wanted everything pink. She wanted the dolls. She wanted what she wanted because homes can do only that much. There is so much else going on in the world. After her birthday, she actually told the neighbor, will you get me a Barbie because my mother won't? So, you know, I what I took upon in a conversation with my husband after that was that it is not important for me to give her a certain environment. What is more important is that she has the freedom to exercise her choice, whatever that choice is. And if it is an extremely girly girl choice, then so be it. And I have no right to judge it and impose my way of thinking that she needs to be a motorcycle rider like I am or whatever else. And I think that therefore, what is required in the education system is a healthy respect for choices that children can make, a healthy respect for a dialogue and an ability to deal with differences. I don't think that we have enough space in our education system for introspection, reflection, and having a healthy dialogue and debate. So if we can build in the skills of being able to have a debate and exchange and be able to look at an issue from multiple points of view, the subject matter can be anything. But if the education system can build our ability to respect differences, our ability to respond to differences with compassion, and our ability to reflect on whatever choices we have made with with an open mind to say, okay, I may have made these choices. Can I make different choices next time? Then I think our education system is far more solid than it may have been in the past. So I also want to give a brief comment about the previous question on the rural girls. I think there's a certain stereotype at play even in that question. And I had a very beautiful experience once on my motorcycle ride, and I thought that I was being this very breaking stereotype woman on a motorcycle going up the Himalayas, etc. And at Uttarakhand, there was this young woman who was the stereotypical rural belle who had this oily hair and a long plait and walked up to me and said, are you going to go up the Mana Pass? And, I thought I was being very patronizing, and I will say, yeah, so can you, and all that. This woman turned around and said, of course, I will. You can do it, so can I. I think it was such a moment of truth for me that we can hold these ideas of stereotypes and breaking stereotypes. But actually, people have the potential in them. The girls from rural parts, on however we might be boxing them and seeing them, is our lens. It has nothing to do with what she or she could not achieve. So I do think that we need to be mindful of sometimes the lenses that we carry.
Yes. I'd love to continue this conversation, but unfortunately, we've completely run out of time, and I've been told that we have a hard stop at 4 o'clock. But it's been a fascinating opportunity to have a conversation with these panelists because they've each done such amazing work. I'd recommend those who are listening to look up each of them and look at their profiles. It's so impressive. So it's been absolutely my honor to have this conversation. Thank you so much to NITIE and P&G for inviting me and giving me this opportunity. I hand it back now to the organizers, but I want to thank our panelists for being so for being so generous with your time and for sharing your stories and sharing your insight. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me.
Thank you, Faye. It was a fantastic conversation, and I absolutely loved listening to Bhavana and Shivangi and Dilip. Thank you for the opportunity, P&G and NITIE. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, wait for a while. We will have a photo now.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for an insightful session. It was very wonderful listening to such an eminent panel. We received many key and engaging thoughts. There were many takeaways too for the attendees. Thank you, Faye, for moderating the session. Thank you, Shivani, Bhavana, Dilip, and Saundarya for accepting the invitation and sharing your thoughts. You all are requested to stay for another Breaking Stereotype session by Professor Poonam, but we will have a group photo now. So I hope all of you have switched on your video. Yeah. So please let us know when we are done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. What a wonderful
Thank you so
conversation.
much.
Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Stay
Thank you.
connected. Over to you, Professor Poonam.
A very good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being part of this Equality Summit journey throughout the day. In this session, we would like to share with you some of the efforts that we have been making as an organization in breaking gender stereotypes. It is often argued that stereotypes are a product of an unconscious bias that impacts our decision making. Having insights about these mental processes allows organizations to move away from stereotyping workplaces and embrace diversity and inclusion. Academic research shows that an inclusive work environment strengthens an organization's ability to innovate. It gives employees the opportunity to realize their full potential. The benefits are huge for both the employees and the organization. Higher employee engagement and work satisfaction are linked to a company's ability to outperform the competition. They lead to operational excellence, strong bonds with stakeholders, and a better ability to launch new products and services. These are steep incentives to take diversity and inclusion seriously. Going with this spirit, we conducted an equality aspiration survey with special emphasis on STEM and SCM. In fact, so far we have been listening to people who have actually broken these stereotypes, right? But we would also want to hear from the aspirants. So this is our small, humble effort in that direction. Here we have a slide, a survey that we did with, say, around 200 plus responses coming from management technical institutes, basically students who are studying there. And they have actually started with their journey of breaking the stereotype in STEM and SCM. So here we present you some of the results that we have got. So in terms of the respondent demographics, what we find is around 31% was the response from females. We would, of course, would have wanted to hear more from them, but this is the case in this. Then age distribution wise, we have people from age group of under 21 years to 36 years and older, the mean being around 25 to 30 years. Now, one of the interesting questions that we had asked them was that who were their role model, that is to which gender they belong. And if you see on the right hand side, we found that majority of men and women have their role models from the same gender. So, you know, there is a path dependency, if we can say that once one breaks a stereotype, whether a male or female, it also has, a way to inspire the others to follow. So this was an interesting finding for us. And then we also had asked them about the top role models that they had in the field of STEM and FCM. And you can see it's an illustrious list of people, of course. And interestingly, we have Indra Nui to top the list there. Can we move on to the next slide, please? So here you would see that we had asked questions about gender equality pertaining to, say, specifically to STEM and SCM. Now, again, both from male and female respondents, what we found was that when it comes to individual capabilities, there is no gender specificity involved. That is, it's gender neutral. So this is a response from both groups, and it's quite heartening to hear, if I may say. Then again, we wanted to see where do you find in terms of equal opportunity, in terms of career options or sectors. Now here we may have found one counterintuitive result, as we may call it, in terms of the reactions in aviation, because aviation is often found to be giving equal opportunity but men and women whom we had asked tended to differ on that. Okay, now this is one of my favorite questions, if I can say. This is about, we wanted to track the generation effect, if I can say, or the environment or ecosystem that inspires you to get into a career of STEM and SCM. And there what we found was that in case of men, most of them are first generation, aspirants or larger percentages from first generation. In contrast, in case of females, in most of the cases, they had somebody to look up to, right? So they already had somebody who was in this career and then they moved on. This is, I think, very important, as a finding for the right ecosystem for women, if I may say. Next slide, please. Yeah, now coming to the challenges, here, so if you just look at the first panel, travel safety, right? I think this is one of the pain points which women more generally feel so. But here, what we would like to highlight is even men thought that it's one of the impediments towards, having a good education system or access to a good education system. So this is something which should, be flagged off, that both men and women find it as a challenge. Then coming to the severity of educational infrastructure, well, cost of education, is something people are worried about. And, parallelly, if you look at the last panel, access to educational infrastructure for 24/7. Now, I combine both of this because I think here, this is an appeal to, say, the industry people or, our collaborators who are watching us today, that this is something where probably as an academician, I would appeal for help from you all, that this is something we would want to address jointly, if possible. So this is, more or less the findings that we had. Now, coming to the social challenges, right? One, of course, is, this is again related to the question that we had in terms of role model. There are not many role models in STEM and SCM, especially in the popular culture. And in fact, there also events like this can make a difference, because since morning we have been trying to bring many, eminent people from STEM and SCM, and hence, making them accessible to students or aspirants is a good way to address this challenge, I may say. Further, the second point, if you see that lack of career counseling, that is also becoming an impediment for students. So while we want, to address or to have more people in the field of STEM and SCM, and of course more women, then this is something also we would like to flag off. So on those grounds, these are basically the general findings, and if I can say, lessons for all of us to see. Now, I would like to share with you how NITIE, being an institution and in the space of STEM and SCM, has been able to address probably, or in the process of addressing, some of these challenges. Next slide, please. Next one. The next one, please. So here, what do we find is, so what we tried to show you, I think the slides is not coming for some reason, is about the gender diversity in NITIE. So if I just shared some numbers with you, out of the total strength of about 151 employees, we have around 36% of women representation at this point. Now, you need to understand this from the perspective that NITIE is an organization where all of us probably are looking at a career of, 30 to 35 years. So this 36% may not look like a great number as of now, but what we see is in the last few recruitments, there has been a lot of emphasis on the women recruitment. And in particular, we find that, like, for instance, at junior faculty level, for instance, we have around 50% representation from women. So which is sort of heartening. In fact, I have the slide up now. So you'll see here that, so this is broadly the representation that we have amongst the employees in NITIE. Now, our commitment to gender diversity is also reflected in a special drive in the admission process. We have a mandate of increasing the number of girl students to a double in the next 5 years. At this point, it stands at 17%, which you see in the bottom pyramid here. And then we want to make it around 36% in the next 2 years. And our endeavor, of course, would be to make it to 50%. This becomes, particularly important for an institution where the intake is only engineers. And of course, not so long ago, we have been so used to hearing stories from women who would say that they would be the only female in the entire batch, right? So this is changing now, definitely, but it needs to change more rapidly. Moreover, our diversity actually doesn't stop at gender. And, quickly, the last 1 minute I would like to spend on this. We have a proactive approach during the admission process to admit students from every nook and corner of the country. The campus life accommodates the culture and diversity that India represents through various formal and informal activities conducted throughout the year. The following video is a testament to this commitment. So please watch this and stay with us for the next much awaited hackathon round at the other end of this video. Thank you so much.